Yo, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Nick and Griff Show. I'm excited to be back here again on a Saturday morning. It's 9:04 a.m., June 30th. Griff, how has your week been, brother?
Week has been fine. It's always fun when Bitcoin bounces a little bit, even though that's not really what the show's about or what we care about all that much necessarily. It just gets the monkey off the back in terms of when people talk about Bitcoin, you don't have to I guess, hide as much right now. I don't know. This is like my first real 80% dip or real big bear market, since I've bought it, where I'm like, man, all right, I guess I look stupid to everybody right now. Do I care? No. But I do, but I know what I look like. I'm a self-aware person. I don't know how you feel about that. Like when you go throughout your weeks, now that everybody knows full out that you are in support of Bitcoin, is it hard to I don't know. Is it hard to hide it? And then is it also is it easy to deal with everybody's comments? Because do people make comments like, I'm worried, what value does that have? Like all the stuff that you see on Twitter is actually very fairly true.
For sure. I think that this is kind of an interesting conversation, and it's funny that you asked that question because Janae and I were having a conversation yesterday, basically revolving around time preference. I think that this is a huge thing to understand in a time like now where the Bitcoin price has been down from what was an all-time high. And we've kind of fallen off over several months. It's been several months that the price has been continually declining, which for the people that don't understand the core fundamentals would say, it's crashing. I'm going to sell everything, right? We mentioned my dad a couple of weeks ago selling all of his Bitcoin. That's just one example, and there are millions others out there that are people are selling, right? But the conversation Janae and I were having yesterday, and I was kind of sharing with her like my thought process on how some of this is impacting me. I think that I've always been this way, but I think Bitcoin has expedited that awareness of that trait of myself. But I almost find more fulfillment in the prudence of living tight today so that I can have opportunity in the future with what I was prudent with today. And what I mean by that is instead of going out to eat at all these nice restaurants every single week, and instead of going on all these killer great vacations like we see a lot of our friends doing, instead of buying brand new this and brand new that and brand new this and brand new that and being irresponsible with our money, we're living a life that's maybe not so fun right now. We don't do a whole lot of fun stuff. We don't eat out at a lot of nice restaurants. We make a lot of food at home. We don't go on a ton of vacations. We have a lot of staycations. And thankfully we've got a pool here and it's summertime, so we're kind of doing that summertime pool vibes out in the sun, right? But it does for sure get to a point where you're like, man, I feel like we're not having any fun. Like we're not enjoying life right now because we're stacking sats and we're stacking cash. And right now we're in the process of buying our first home. And so we've been preparing for these things along the way. And I'm super excited because it seems like the further time goes on, the more time that I've made money and been able to plan how I'm going to operate with that money, everything seems to be working out according to plan, which is beautiful. I'm so excited about. So that's kind of my thought there is I'm finding a lot of fulfillment and purpose in the prudence of today in the pursuit of tomorrow. So
Yeah, that's a
how
good
it is.
point. When you are stacking sats, it is so interesting. I feel the same way. And Nick actually is now a homeowner. I don't know if we've said that on the podcast yet. He is about to be a
Pending
homeowner,
sale, but soon to be.
soon to
Absolutely.
be a homeowner. He's hunting, he's getting a home. We're excited about it. And that's something that living in Northern California, as Nick knows, I think I'd like to own a home, not because I even view it as an investment. I more just want my own citadel, my own fortress.
Sure.
I just view it that way more than I view it really any other way. Like I think real estate as an investment is interesting, but that's not really the path I've taken because I kind of view Bitcoin as the best investment there is. I mean, there's only 21 million. Have you guys heard that line before? One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin.
One
But
Bitcoin is one Bitcoin.
but
Absolutely.
looking at Nick buying a home, immediately I'm on Zillow. I'm like, all right, like let's get a home. Like let's figure this out. And I got to be honest, it's just like still like even after that, like just buying, like I bought a bunch of sats recently and very happy buying the sats. Don't really think I realize every time I buy the sats, I'm like, yeah, not buying a home yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, not yet, and especially where everything is so expensive where I live, it's just, it is the ultimate like low time preference. And I was actually, it's so funny. Sierra's younger stepsister, we were taking her to Olive Garden last night, and she's 17, like about to apply to colleges and the whole thing. And she's like asking all kinds of stupid questions. I mean, I know we were told there are no stupid questions, but I bet we all at that age were asking just like the most wrong questions, like the things that just do not matter. And I actually told her, I was like, Jade, I just have to tell you something. This might sound odd, but everybody you're about to enter into college with, every person you're surrounded by
They're
right
all
now,
idiots.
yeah, including your parents to a degree, have a very high time preference for you. They're thinking about this
Right
very
now, right now.
really inconsequential decision that is college, and what happens at college and where you go to college and like all of this stuff. It is inconsequential. Dude, I have now in real life met more people, learned more things, and it's only been 2 years. So I just told her, I was like, you guys all have high time preferences. I don't think anybody knows what that means, but if you invest in a hard asset that you view really will only accrue like an immense amount of value over time, I mean, you're just kind of living a different life than everybody else. Are we going to get into a market check today, brother?
We do need to get into a market check today because as I was pulling this up, look at what I saw. I'm just going to jump straight to it. Oh, Bitcoin shooting up again. That's kind of exciting, huh?
Very interesting.
So, if you guys aren't tracking the markets pretty regularly, which I think you are, you will have noticed here over the past couple of days, and I guess you could call it the past month, Bitcoin is coming back up again. So that's exciting. We just literally had a shoot. Let's see, that's 11:05 a.m. of yesterday. We shoot up, and where are we at? Is this up to today? Where is this at? Is my
You're right.
chart lagging behind? What's the deal?
No, you're good. I've
Am I
actually
good there?
looked at the price this morning. Yeah, it actually shot back up a little bit this morning. My
That's
only
this
thought
morning, right?
Yeah, my only thought on the price action is if we're in a recession, like if you believe in a lot like recession stuff, wouldn't everybody just consider this like a dead cat bounce? Like it's just bouncing and then it's going to continue to go back down a little bit. I know Bitcoin might at some point decouple from, the S&P and a lot of these other markets just because it's a much smaller asset class. It has a fixed supply. It largely is more dependent on the next halving than it is whatever current market conditions are, which market conditions are not good. So I'm just wondering, like, where's this money coming from? I think I'd mentioned this last time. There are some new whales that have entered the Bitcoin market
Yeah, you
uh,
mentioned that.
very recently, especially since we now found out Tesla sold 75% of their Bitcoin.
Crazy, huh?
I mean, it's crazy, but I think at 24,000, this is not financial advice. We should probably put that in our intro so that we don't have to say that every time we say something about the price of something.
It's
But
in the description. It's in the
but
description
but
as
I
well.
shouldn't be giving financial advice. I'm just saying that it seems like at 24,000 compared to the S&P over 4,000, Bitcoin is a much better value. But
Yep. Yeah,
Bitcoin,
for those of you guys that are just listening here, the Bitcoin price as of today, again, June or July 30th, not June, July 30th, we are sitting at $24,500. The S&P 500 is sitting at $4,130. The Nasdaq or QQQ is sitting at $315, and the Dow Jones is sitting at $32,845. But yeah, it's kind of exciting, to see a couple of these shoots in the market. I'd be lying if I didn't, or if I said that I didn't get a little, oh, 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 if I did get a little excited about it. So,
well, it's
but
fun because the only thing price does is it truly does validate everything we're saying. The market decides. We can talk about how great the Bitcoin network is. We can talk about all the great benefits it's going to have for the little guy and how it's changing the world, how it could be literally the greatest technology created while we're alive. But I guess because of it being a monetary asset, I mean, the price of it or the value of it in the marketplace has to go up significantly for us to in turn be right at any point in time. So when the price shoots up like that, when it shoots up 10% in a day, you're just like, see, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, good.
Well, it's like, over the past, I really wish that the Apple Stocks app showed the percentage up or down
Yeah, I
based
don't.
on the 1 week, the 1 month, the 1 day, whatever. It doesn't do that. But let me look at this. So the past month, Bitcoin is up 21%. Guess who's talking about it? Freaking nobody.
I know.
Nobody's talking about that.
Everybody wants to talk about what it's down year to date, but if you can see in the tweet that I just pulled up, which our listeners can't, at $900, Bitcoin is too expensive. I'll wait. Then it went to 300 and it failed. Then
Failed,
it went to
told you.
17,000 and it was way too expensive. They'll wait. Then it went to 3,500 and it failed. Told you, failed. And that's reference by 2017. Then it
Yep.
went up to 68,000, way too expensive. I'll wait.
Just
And
here a
now it's
couple
back down
months
to
ago.
25,000 and everybody's saying it failed, but it just went up 21%. And Nick, you're absolutely right. Nobody's talking about it because everybody feels like this is probably just a little bounce, like in what is an ultimate recession.
Yeah.
But okay, what if Bitcoin is more recession proof than you think? Because it really should be during times like this. There's only 21 million. All of these huge asset managers, they could keep playing around in the bond market, getting killed by inflation. They could keep getting killed by, China's not very happy that we're flying senators over to Taiwan. Like there are things in the marketplace that this big money can't control, but you can control how many Bitcoin there are. There's only 21 million. So if you just start buying that up, your money really is safe to a degree. But
So you just mentioned recession here, Griff. Look at this here. Everybody's seen it here, but second quarter, Q2 of 2022, we officially have 2 consecutive quarters of of negative growth GDP. So real gross domestic product GDP decreased at an annual rate of 0.9% in the second quarter of 2022, according to the advance estimate released by the Bureau of Economic Analysis in the first quarter. Real GDP decreased 1.6%. So you can see this actual visual chart here where it shows Q1 and Q2 of 22 are negative. I have not read through this whole thing, but definitely interesting stuff we're seeing happening in the economy right here. So
Q2 of 2020 is so crazy. Like such an economic, it's going to be like I think in 50, 60, 70, 80 years, everybody will talk about Q2 2020 like the great financial crisis. Like that was the inflection point. That's when all the decisions were made. That's when everybody kind of in football terms, because Nick and I from a past life are football players, that's when everybody's assholes got a little tight, right there, because they were like, they didn't trust the market. They didn't trust aside from the fact that they shut the economy down, they didn't trust, like, I don't know, and just like basic principles, like not making rash decisions and not printing money and letting the market figure it out. And it could crash. Something like a pandemic could crash the market in a Bitcoin standard. I'm just putting that, I mean, it could, but that doesn't mean it's not going to come back just as fast if it is a good economy. Our economy, I think, if you can tell anything since Q2 of 2020, is as artificial as it can possibly get. I mean, like it is artificial. Everything is artificial about it. And I don't know if that's the world we want to live in. I mean, we can all play both games, right? Like we could play the Bitcoin game. We could play just throw as much money into the S&P as humanly possible in your lifetime game. We could play the Social Security game. But I think there are greater powers that be in terms of just like general market principles, a free market, because the world is a free market, whether we like it or not. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, Nick. Like, there's obviously authoritarian governments with different economies, but and in the world, it is a free market. It's just what jurisdiction do you live in? Like, who do you have representing you at that time? But it is a free market, and I think within that, like, Bitcoin is truly going to like spearhead just an economic revolution because it is a freedom technology. Like, once the United States figures that out, I do fully believe we will support it more than say Russia or China will. I do fully believe that the United States will adopt Bitcoin much more graciously than these authoritarian states. And if they don't, I would start ringing some bells, if I'm being honest, just because it's like, whoa, where do we live? That's just kind of my thought.
Well, I think that's an interesting thought there. Kind of thinking about the macro global economy and the major players in those. Right, think of all the major countries. Bitcoin is almost like an exercise routine in a sense, where this is something that's gonna be difficult on the front end, but once you get it implemented, it's gonna be really, really good for you, right? And here's the kind of thought based on what you were saying there is that these countries like the Chinese Communist Party or the Communist Party of China, right? However you want to call it, CCP. What is that? What does that stand for? It's the
Chinese Communist Party. You're right.
Chinese. Okay, yeah, I was right.
Yeah, they
Anyways,
don't hide it, Nick. They don't hide it. They don't have a reason to hide it.
yeah. So those guys, Russia. I mean, like all of those guys are the fat, out of shape people that it's going to be really difficult to make that switch. Whereas what you're saying, America, with as much freedom that we already have compared to the rest of the world, we're like already in shape, kind of. We've already got some freedom in as far as being free market, but it's still going to be a little tough on the front end, right? But at least we're not fat and out of shape, and we're starting from ground zero, right?
Right. I think in this current economic climate, I don't think any nation state has truly figured out what the best economy can be. But that's because third parties are very inefficient. Middlemen, more often than not, are much more hurting the situation than they are helping in most industries, especially when you're talking about a government. I don't know if any country has medicine, healthcare figured out for all, homelessness figured out for all, like what the real price of a house should be. But that's why we preach a free market. It's the most fair way for us to get there. You can't say that we have billionaires in America because it's a free market. You can say we have billionaires in America because of an inefficient government, because of tax breaks, because of who type of market dynamics. Like, how does who factor into economics? Not really too sure, but very greatly right now. I mean, like literally who can get you a job, who can make you an executive, who can put you into office. It does some crazy stuff, but I was going to share this little quote that I just saw on Twitter that I thought is a really interesting point about Bitcoin moving forward in terms of how is America going to regulate it? Like, how are they going to look at it? So Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast put a Satoshi quote up there. Imagine there was a metal as scarce as gold, but with the following properties: gray, poor conductor of electricity, weak, not ductile or easily malleable, not useful for any practical purpose, but one special magical property: transportation over a communications channel. That's huge, because when you're looking at it from a government standpoint, telecommunications, when you make a phone call, they can't tax phone calls. How are you taxing Bitcoin transactions if it's like a phone call? It's unconstitutional. It's not okay. Yeah. Bitcoin is literally just an open source ledger on a telecommunications channel. It's so amazing, like when you think about it like that, because that is where you should go, oh, it really isn't like gold. This really isn't like any form of money humans have ever seen. And that's a good thing. Guess what? Look at history. We've messed up money. We didn't get money right. Like, we haven't gotten it right yet. We've done the best with what we can, but because of the digital world being what it is, because of telecommunications and the advances in technology, like, this is what money could be. And I think it's like, that's the paradigm shift that people need to experience more often than not. I don't know if that is shared enough, but it's like, yeah, we can talk about money and the price of it and everything like that, but guys, like, we've messed up money. Like, we didn't get money right. Gold is not like the best form of money for a number of reasons. Just like paper money controlled by nation states is not good for a number of reasons. But I don't know what you think about that, Nick, in terms of like, how are they going to tax a communications channel? How are they going to really get away with manipulating Bitcoin the way they did with gold, or the way they obviously do with paper money? How is a government how is the United States going to do that? And then more so, how is China going to do that? How is Russia going to do that? Can they do that? I mean, they do censor the internet pretty well, but can
Okay.
they get in the way
So
of
think about this, Griff. So this is the example that I think of to wrap my own mind around it is a phone call. If I were to pick up my phone right now, and I'm gonna show everybody because I love you so much. If I click on my favorites here and I call Griff and Don, and you get a call from me on your phone, what person made that possible? Nobody. There was no person that made that individual call possible. Sure, we can talk about the innovation that happened all the way for the years, all the way up to this point, but that's not where we're at. I'm thinking this exact call, that there was no person involved in that, right? That was an automated by a computer operation that happened there on a communications network, right? Now, here's kind of the thought, and this is just to make my mind wrap around it. I'm thinking of like a black box, and that's the computer algorithm and operations and all the code that goes into making that call automated, right? To where there's no person in between us that has to be there, that has to press this button and flip that switch for the call to go through. And then I'm imagining Griff sitting on that side of me and wires connecting us, right? That's literally what is happening here, although it's much more complex. We're not talking about necessarily just wires connecting our phone to each other to some box in the middle of us, but that's essentially what is happening, right? We're utilizing a third-party infrastructure, which is, for me, I'm on AT&T, but the entire infrastructure that is connecting us, that's the black box and the wires that connect us, right? Well, how does the government tax your phone call? That's kind of the same question that we're thinking about here is like, okay, well, we've
more or not, how many people in America, if they started taxing phone calls, how quickly would we have a revolution? Like, how quickly would things change if every time you just called me like you did, the United States government was like, and we'll take a 10-cent fee. Thank you very much.
absolutely.
Like,
so we've innovated up to this point, right?
right.
And now we've got this new system that is significantly more efficient, right? Think of back in the day whenever there were operators on phones. I'm sure they got paid. I'm sure they didn't just work for free. I'm sure they got paid to operate that system, right? They were the operator. They operated the system and they were paid to do that. And guess who paid for them to do that? It's the people that were paying for the phone service to utilize that infrastructure. Well, now we make that process more efficient by automating it with the technology that we've built and developed up to this point. And now we no longer need that operator there. Well, great. Now we don't have to pay that person. We can reduce our cost, right? Think about just a raw cost, not from a business standpoint, but just a raw cost. Now it costs less for us to do the same thing as before, and it's quicker, and it's more efficient. We don't have to have somebody there to worry about doing these things, right? Now, that is true. That's what happens with innovation and technology, Bitcoin included. And where this gets really strange, right, is the question you're asking is, how could the government tax this? Well, it's an automated process, and I don't know. I mean, that it's really a strange thing to think about, right? Because it's almost like, hey, we found this huge innovation, and it makes the process efficient by 30%, makes it more efficient by 30%, right? You reduce your cost by 30%. And then the government would come in and say, okay, well, now that this is more efficient and it's decentralized and this and that and this and that, and we're not controlling it. Well, we need to tax this because, yada, yada, we have to have control, whatever the story is. Now we're going to add on 30%. It's like, well, then what's the point of the innovation, right? What's the point of the innovation if we're not allowing that innovation to flourish and play out into the market, right? Which then comes back to free markets. Like the market must decide. The market has to decide, and the market does decide, right? Even thinking about the people that live in China that are under the dictatorship of this central authority, right? they still choose. That market still chooses what they want. Now, but the difference is that the central authority forces you to operate in a certain way, right? But they don't have to want to do that. They can want to do something over here, and that is the market deciding something. But you've got an external force that's trying to push the natural current of the stream in another direction, right? Which can be done. And that's what
Yeah,
they're doing exactly right now.
I very much agree. I also, I kind of think from like just that China standpoint, the CCP is promising them some way of life, some better form of life, which is why they're complying, I think in the way that they do. They're basically saying, you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to make decisions. You just need to show up and we'll take care of the rest. And honestly, that's a very promising proposition for a lot of people. What we do over in the United States is a stressful business. People obviously like mental health in the United States, the way we eat food, how we are marketed to, propaganda, things like that. There's obviously a lot of things that have been done for money that are not necessarily with the best intentions for actual human beings. And we've definitely let a few things run too far that I'm not so sure like something like the CCP would let happen. That's not me saying that we need to be communist. That's me saying that there's probably a problem with the money because people have enough time and enough money to just come up with crazy ads and marketing campaigns and find all kinds of different ways to support their big corporation with a good advertisement. Or how do we get people to eat more breakfast? I mean, a lot of those stories that you start reading when you read about marketing, it's like, oh, so none of that's true? No, like none of that's true. And furthermore, Nick, what will be interesting about how the government tries to tax it is if you're changing money to literally just signing keys on a ledger and you are the network itself, like once there's no more Bitcoin, dude, all these miners and nodes more or less are just processing transactions for a very, very small fee. But at that point in time, in theory, that small fee is like great. And also, if you think about it furthermore, guys, Bitcoin and how mining works and how the network works, it's trying to make it more efficient in terms of mining energy or what we're doing with energy.
They're
So,
incentivized to do that.
so where will energy be at in 100 years? I don't know, dude. If Bitcoin ran on nuclear, it wouldn't matter. It would just be something that you have to strengthen the network anyway. And so why I think the government is so afraid is that money in its current form is the only way that rich people and governments have had maximum influence. They will still have lots of influence, but if there's no need for them, like if politicians truly are just there to, more or less just try to like be in the way but out of the way, like just a healthy balance between corporation and people, because we know corporations don't want to see people happy. It's just that our government has kind of, from 1776 to now, I would argue that it's definitely more in favor of corporation now than it was 200 years ago, and definitely less for the little guy and more for the big guy now than it was 200 years ago. And ultimately, that's the problem we're talking about, because corporations are not, I mean, you might be able to get a lot out of them if you pay your people better. But at the end of the day, if there's a recession in the market, somebody's got to go. Okay. Like that, it's just numbers. It's not personal, it's business.
Yeah.
And that really, in my opinion, is the only real need for government. That maybe a little bit of like, I don't really see the need. What's the point of military if you look at all wars and they're all based around money, and money is now a communications channel open to anybody and everybody? Then how many wars are really truly going to be fought? I mean, for what? Like, what are we fighting for, guys? You can't have any more of the money than I can. All you can do is actually, literally, all they can do in war form is hash more. Who can get more Bitcoin? Who can validate more transactions? Who can secure the network better? And if you look at it from that standpoint, that means nation states eventually would start competing to try to own more Bitcoin, which
Yeah.
I don't really have a problem with at all. If that's how they want to get involved, I mean, that's how they're going to try to keep their power. So that's kind of,
Which, I don't know. I don't know if you read much into what I sent you on the Chips app or the Chips Act,
no.
where I guess Congress passed $52 billion funding to the Chips Act, which is basically funding the research and development, manufacturing, I think, and design of semiconductors here in the United States. Which that's pretty much about all that I've read about the deal. And I guess it did also say that the United States, one of our top exports as a country at one point, and I forget the years, but I want to say it was either like the late 1900s or the early 2000s or something. But it was saying that we were a net exporter of semiconductors, and that it was a huge import for us, or export for us. And so, but then since then we've fallen off, and our semiconductor exports has dropped from 40% at whatever the initial time was to 11% today. And so now they're going to fund $52 billion worth of research and development, design, and manufacturing of semiconductors, which again sounds nice. It sounds good. Sounds like it's maybe not a horrible thing, but I haven't really read much else into it. Another thing that I saw, Griff, that I thought was hilarious that the Bitcoin Twitter plebes will love was this post from Field Nas, Hammond of Texas. He posts this picture of this Asian girl, and he says, "Well, it was bound to happen. Midlife crisis, perhaps. So many sought my courtship, but this is the one. We're engaged to be married in September. I've sent her enough Bitcoin to buy a house, furniture, and vehicle in Singapore. Get visa 815, and can't wait to meet her in person."
That's real.
No, it's a complete joke. And so you guys, the Twitter plebes, you guys know the deal. Like, these are like these spam accounts. It's always these Asian girls, and they all look they're all dressed and in, like they're in nice locations, in nice building, whatever it is. And it's always like shooting a message like, let's see if we've even I don't want to pull that up actually. Anyways, I thought it was hilarious, and there were some people that were posting just funny stuff about it, because you always get those spam messages, right, from those girls, and they're like, "Hey, send me this Bitcoin, and I'll send you back more," right? Or it's like, "Hey, I'm into crypto. Are you into crypto too?" And it's always like just some dumb message that you can tell is like a fake spam type of message. But man, they got to be getting people out there. They got to be getting somebody out there. But that guy posted it as kind of a spoof, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't reply. I mean, I don't have much for the spam accounts. I think it's I think it's a bug, not a feature of these centralized platforms, and I think that it's just a way for them to manipulate data, and it's kind of a bad feature of the internet, because it's kind of like one of those poor incentives where these social media platforms are really just incentivized for activity, and how much people are like actually watching this stuff for ad revenue. It's all ad revenue driven.
Yep.
And create a spam account, try and lure kids to your account. We don't care. Just be an account and be active and like do stuff, because that is what is getting us paid ultimately. So it's just like, it's another poor incentive structure that hopefully will get fixed over time.
Think about this, Griff, too. We've had tons of conversations about this. Think about the sales world. Talk about the incentives of that, right? So the incentives of the sales world is to make a sale and earn a commission on that sale, right? And obviously, different industries are different. Some are very high volume sales, some are lower volume sales, yada yada, right? We know that that's a lot different. But here's the ultimate high time preference sales guy. Here's the pitch. "Hi, my name's Nick Burns, and I've got a product to sell. Do you want to buy it from me?" Okay, you're not going anywhere with that, right? That's so transactional based. It's about right now, today, what can you do for me type of mindset. Whereas the Bitcoin mindset would be the low time preference mindset would be, "Hi, my name is Nick Burns. It's great to meet you. Who are you? Like, let's get to be friends. Can we get to know each other?" Right? It's doing business on a relationship basis. It's forming relationships with people over time. But again, industries are different. Some industries are much more, you have to go directly for a sale. pretty early on, or you're not going to get the business. Others, like my industry in commercial construction, is a much slower sales time. It's a longer length of total time, meaning I'm forming relationships over several months and in some cases years, in order to get to a point where we then do start sending business back and forth in a business relationship. Talk about the difference
So
between proof of work and proof of stake in that sense.
yeah. So, but the question that we're kind of answering or talking about is, what value do sales bring, or is the commission like, is it ultimately a net positive or negative to the situation?
Well, no, I'm thinking about incentives,
Right.
but from the perspective of high time preference, low time preference, proof of work versus proof of stake, right? Those are kind of the opposites. So thinking about sales and the incentive structure for proof of work and a low time preference mindset. And then also think about the incentives for somebody that is a proponent of proof of stake and the high time preference mindset.
Yeah. I guess I just kind of think about sales as more of like a market driven necessity, where it's like there are a lot of sales, like you're saying, that are very high time preference, very like, just get this done quick, and more or less you may not need them, you may need them. But in a lot of and for a lot of reasons, I feel like salespeople are important, because most of the time consumers don't know anything about the product, and the owner
Yeah.
can't sell to everybody. So the salesman, if he's a good salesman, doesn't just, try to run you up and get the biggest commission possible. The greatest salesman has a low time preference, and gets to know you a little bit, and gets to know that if you make them a good decision here and maybe you don't take your biggest commission, they'll come back for a second car or boat or whatever you're selling. It doesn't matter. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like in the market, it doesn't matter what standard or what the money is, there will always be a need for like commission based sales, because you need to employ people to go sell it. And you also need somebody to come in and buy it who doesn't know anything about it. So it's kind of like, it's always kind of a necessity. I just feel like it's like depends on the market, depends on the product. But it's kind of like something that is like, sales is a necessity. I think it's kind of wild. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm extremely biased because I'm in sales and the economy is not doing well. But sales is something that you always need. I mean, obviously, some companies need them more than others. Obviously, there's a lot of software and websites and things like that that can do a pretty good job in replace of a salesman. But sales has true value if you talk to the right salespeople. Like if you go to the car dealership, and you know what I'm talking. You go to the car dealership, you know a guy that works at the car dealership, your friends, your boys, you get an under the hood look at like everything they're actually doing. And you see that they do provide value, but they also like they're getting paid quite a bit just to provide that value. So if you know a little bit in return as a consumer, you can get a lower price just because you kind of know the game a little bit. And I feel like maybe there's poor incentives around that, obviously, because you're just somebody's trying to get more money from the other person. But at the end of the day, if you're an informed consumer, which it's not that hard to be an informed consumer, you have to look up the product before you buy it. It doesn't really matter what it is. Just do like a little 30-second, even your Amazon stuff.
Go
Just
watch a YouTube
scroll
video. A
down,
lot of times
just
there's
scroll
YouTube
down.
videos.
Yeah, just scroll down on the reviews. I promise you, somebody's probably reviewed it, and somebody's probably been like, "No, yes, no, yes." Um, but the incentives, yeah, I mean, there's obviously it's more or less. I don't know if it's a bad incentive. It's just an interesting. I don't know. It's like playing poker, dude. Like, you play poker with somebody and you might be bluffing, or are you bluffing, and you're just sitting across the table from them for a $50,000 pot. It's like you just got to read the other person. And I don't know if that's a bad incentive. I just feel like nowadays people are scared of those
Mm,
interactions. People don't want to be in those interactions anymore. And you're
mm.
in sales too. It's like we both work in sales though, where we're selling, but there's mutual benefit. Like there's a lot of benefit for everybody that goes around. So it's,
Well,
you-
so
you're not
Griff, I think it's
really,
important to note too, because you and I have a lot of conversations about this just privately, and we always talk about these things from a strategic standpoint, with the assumption, because we both know each other so well at this point, with the assumption that we're operating with a with a good focus in our mind, right? It's not what can I get from this person? It's let me actually get to know this person. And then at that point, you're not acting like you care. You just care. You should care.
Yeah,
Don't act like you care. Just care. If you show up and like the guys have been making fun of me for a little while because I've gone into some meetings with some pretty big people, and I'm just the same dude that I am today. I show up and I'm gonna tell the truth. Sometimes it's not the best thing to say, but it's the truth, and it's not necessarily not like in a bad sense. It's just pure honesty when we're talking about what our business is, and and but then that allows the person that I'm working with to also open up and be more vulnerable, which is sometimes whenever we think about these things strategically and we don't understand that we're assuming that we operate that way. I think it can sound a little like malicious. But yeah, like I mean, on that side, we're very conscious about. I'm going to actually try to just be friends with this person. Like, can I do business with this person? And I'll tell you too. I've also had conversations with people and that I thought I may have wanted to do business with, and then was like, I don't really like that. I don't really like vibe with that type of person or whatever, and I don't do business with them anymore. And maybe it was I'd kind of worked with them for a little bit and we had tried to drum up some business, but it just never worked out. And because we didn't really vibe, we don't do business together. And
right.
so, being who you really are and really caring, you will naturally be pulled to people that also give that back in return, right? And
Yeah,
and that's the beauty of true business is that's low time preference because that takes a long time to develop.
right. You realize if you meet somebody who does have a low time preference and kind of an outward or future looking perspective, it's like, dude, you guys might not even be in the same companies you're in right now, but if you make that business connection, it's a small world. So like you always will, it'll always come back around. Just to put this back
Absolutely.
into Bitcoin perspective, I feel like I would not be this way if I didn't get into Bitcoin. Bitcoin has forced me to care because Bitcoin has forced me to look at the world from a different viewpoint than I would ever looked at it. I mean, I already looked at it from a pretty cold economics perspective. Like that was always my background. That's what I enjoy. Like I realize numbers are numbers, it is what it is. But Bitcoin has changed my perspective. I'm like, oh, it could be better. Oh, I care a lot. Oh, I'm probably like gonna have to be this Bitcoin's free marketing because otherwise something else might overrun it. Oh, I just want to create a podcast because if I get anybody into it, if I get 5 people into it, 10 people into it, it was worth it because I got into it literally over a Bitcoin thread or a thread, a Twitter thread. It's just like, oh, I got to do this. So now in my life, I now have something like Bitcoin where like, dude, I've supported this thing because I believe in it because I've studied it because I'm like, okay, like this is really like I'm going to believe in this to the end. I do not care. I've run into so many people that it's like, oh, okay, like blah blah, like ask questions, but I know how to care about something that other people don't believe in. And
Hmm.
that in and of itself is like you could be at your own company, you could be in a meeting with somebody, but you can just
That's
tell
kind of a
somebody
perseverance type of thing too, right?
yeah, you can just tell that somebody like it's different than even our football experience. Like the Bitcoin thing at this point, I'm like we have this podcast, we've been 40, 60, 20, like we've been up and down. I've had all kinds of people tell me what and like I literally yesterday there was like a friend conversation. I heard somebody say something about like ETH's proof of stake, and I literally was like, no. I was literally just like, no. I was like, I'm not. You guys can have this conversation, but I don't want to be here for it because that shit is a crap coin, and it's not worth anything. And I could literally tell you like 10 different reasons why, like it doesn't mean anything. And so that's what I'm saying. Like I care. Like I'm willing to do that at this point, just because I'm not. I don't feel toxic. I don't feel any type of way. I've
Yeah.
studied thousands of hours of this stuff. If there was another project or something of that nature that was better than Bitcoin or could complement it or whatever, I'm gonna hop on that. I mean, I will. I'm not. I more or less don't care what it is, but I just feel like it needs to be Bitcoin. I mean, like nobody's ever been able to do it twice because people don't care about you. Bitcoin doesn't care. That's kind of the whole point. It's trustless. And anything like Ethereum on down, and I guess this is a good segue into like what's going on now with ETH about to merge and all this crap. It's like, guys, that's awesome and everything, but you're missing the whole point of all this. You cannot trust anybody. You cannot base your decisions around any more small groups making monetary decisions. You can't make your world work when it only comes from a room of 6 people. It just doesn't work. So with Bitcoin, it's like, I care. It's shown me how to care. It's shown me how to, maybe I've learned also how to properly care. I can't just yell at people. I have to talk to them. I have to try to understand them. But ultimately, Bitcoin has really helped me do exactly what Nick was talking about. And that's just kind of like, care about something, be in the real world, know how to have a low time preference, care about the little things, care about the little guy, like take your time, don't get your feelings hurt in all these types of situations, but at the same time, care a lot, which is a very hard balance between not caring about certain things and caring a lot. You got to be able to brush stuff off. But I mean, like, I don't know where you want to take it from here, brother, but like that's what I mean. Bitcoin has made me care, and it does change the way you operate in business. It will change the way you interact with your friends. It will change the way you look at yourself, quite honestly, because if you're truly open minded enough, like Bitcoin is that like it is that like life altering. I mean, it is from our perspective. I've said this on the podcast before. If you truly believe in it, it is literally the greatest discovery in human history since what? Flight? I mean, maybe even more than that to a degree, in a different way. But that's kind of what I think. I think with the whole Ethereum thing, just back to that, it's like you guys are true, like you guys are missing that. And all the people who buy ETH, I'm telling you, do not feel the same way about ETH that I do about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Promise you, guarantee you. People who
sure.
have way more money in it than I do will not continue to stack in
The
an
investment mindset is a complete shift in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, like, I already know there's thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people at this point that believe in Bitcoin more than the price of it. And there's nobody in the Ethereum ecosystem, including Vitalik, because I just saw a video that I quote tweeted yesterday on our account where he was like, yeah, me and the founders, I got them to sell 70,000 ETH basically at the top. That's what he said in an interview.
Yeah,
God,
I
what
saw
do you
that.
okay, so
Yeah.
like what are we okay, cool. I literally like I saw that and I'm like, that's enough for me to go, what are we doing here? Like what are we even talking about anymore? Let's build
They sold
decentralized
it at the
on
top
a lightning
and
network and called it a
yeah,
day. Like what
extracted all kinds of capital from the deal.
yeah,
Well, so think of it like this, right? So all we're talking about here is proof of work versus proof of stake, right? The proof
true.
of stake is the quick, not sustainable answer, right? And you're kind of talking about some of the differences in the paradigm, right, of the mindset. So I told you we were talking a little earlier that Janae and I were having this conversation about high time preference, low time preference, and balancing, right, having fun with that because we want to go out and do things and kind of have experiences, right? Her and I love doing experiences together, but you pay money for those, right?
Mhm.
And so, but we've been in a position where we're prioritizing, hey, we were saving cash for the house, we're buying Bitcoin, and we're setting up we're setting up a longer strategic play. And so that sometimes can feel as if we're sacrificing the fun and the enjoyment of life today. And so I was kind of thinking about it just for myself, right? Self-awareness is the big key in all of this stuff. And so I was thinking about it myself, like, how do I feel? And I wrote some stuff down here, and I got to hear your thoughts on it and tell me if you also feel the same. I find purpose and fulfillment in my work and hobbies. I enjoy my toil, my work, my labor. I have a great job that's fun with better people to work with. I have really interesting and fun hobbies in Bitcoin and the podcast, right, that we're doing here. I get to pursue and develop and progress in all that I do, right? All these different these hobbies and what I'm doing for work, those two paired together, I get to progress in all of those things, which is exciting, right? That brings a level of fulfillment. When I get better, I feel good and celebrate. When I get worse or stay at the same too long, or stay the same for too long, I feel bad and immediately look for ways to begin improving again, right? And that takes a lot of self-awareness, right? To feel kind of the downturn. I didn't get up and do my morning routine every single day this week. That's like I can feel that difference, right? But it takes some level of self-awareness to get to that point, right? So as I continue this cyclical nature of life that seems to be cyclical, right? I don't know if you feel that same way, but I kind of feel like there's just this natural ebb and flow of life. But as I continue this, I become more aware of what is good for me and to do, or what is good for me to do and what is bad for me to do. So the thought was, as I continue the cyclical nature of life, and I'm I'm doing all of these different hobbies and things for work that I enjoy, that I get to progress in and develop in, and see that progression and see that development. I find a ton of fulfillment in that, but I also become more aware of myself, right, in my mindset, right? So we're talking about proof of work versus proof of stake. Proof of work is the right answer. It may not be the easiest answer, but it's the right answer. Proof of stake is the easy answer and could be it could be an answer. Proof of stake could for sure work. Proof of stake could work if all the actors were great actors and they were pious, right? You call them pious. They were morally just people. Proof of stake could work, but the fact of the matter is that that's not the case, right? So proof of work is the difficult answer because there's a lot of difficulty with it. There comes some there's this natural
There's
ebb
real
and
world
flow.
challenges. There's real world challenges to proof of
Yeah,
work.
there's a
Yeah.
natural ebb and flow because we're it's not like we can just also mine Bitcoin, right? You think about the protection of the network. We can't just mine Bitcoin and not take resources from somewhere else. There is a finite amount of resources
Trade-off.
in the world to some
It's a
level,
trade-off.
right? There's a
Yeah.
trade-off, right? So it's not that Bitcoin is bad or anything like that, but there's a trade-off, right? So we have to decide, okay, we're going to redirect this energy now here, and we're going to redirect just a small portion of the amount of energy from the legacy financial system over to Bitcoin mining to preserve and protect the Bitcoin network, which is a fraction of the energy use. And it does that and more. And now we've got all this extra surplus over here that we did not use since we switched to this new Bitcoin standard financial system that we can now redirect to other areas, right? It's beautiful to take less energy and do the same that you could do over here with more energy, because then it becomes more efficient, right? And if we can remove a human element to it and it can just operate on its own, as long as we feed it energy, we just have to give it electricity, right? Think that's all. That's what it is. You have to give it electricity, just like watering a plant. You don't make the plant grow. You just give it energy and nutrients. You fertilize it. You give it water. You just feed it energy, right? And we're doing the same with Bitcoin via the mining process and running nodes and running the algorithms and verifying all these transactions that are happening, right? And we know that it's obviously much more complex than that. But
Well,
in order to
yes,
do
as
that, you
energy
feed
gets
it
more
energy.
efficient, the question is energy needs to get more efficient, not Bitcoin. Energy needs to get better.
Absolutely right. And so there's
Understand.
another example of where the incentives are aligned to continue to make more. It's just this ever expanding need for innovation. It creates this
Right.
need for innovation, and the market will move to meet that need.
Yeah, people don't I don't think people understand the aspect of like Bitcoin and energy. Bitcoin is not draining energy. Bitcoin is not doing something that we're not already doing. We're already becoming short on energy. We're already having energy problems. We already are very inefficient, don't know how to move it, don't know how to use nuclear properly, or are scared to. We don't want to mine more fossil fuels in the States, so it's a globalized industry. Actually, arguably, I mean, did like the energy industry, I mean, fossil fuels on down is a largely it's gold now. Wars are fought over energy. So to think that Bitcoin is the problem with energy is just a very I feel like I don't want to say uneducated, but I feel like you're not reading about like what is energy and how much better can energy get aside from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just here, it's just this monetary network, and you'd be a fool to say, okay, well, all the energy that Nick just pulled up, all the energy an air conditioner uses is more important than protecting the world's monetary network so that everybody has access to a sound money? Yeah, I mean, I would think that's actually a pretty good use of more energy than it uses. But at the end of the day, we as humans need to find a more efficient way to use energy, mine energy, produce energy, consume energy. We need to find a more efficient way of doing that. And Bitcoin actually is the next largest step to it, just because it can actually be hooked up to any form of energy for the most part, as long as it can still do what it needs to do. But most of the time, Bitcoin runs on wasted energy. I mean, that's where our government comes into play. And just for the listeners, that's what a lot of Bitcoiners believe. At the end of the day, a lot of these states are going to go, okay, I do have a lot of wasted energy. You're telling me as a state government, I can authorize Bitcoin miners to tax-free mine Bitcoin with energy that was already going to be wasted? Oh, okay. And it's going to help our electrical grid. Oh, and it's going to secure oh, okay, that's really good. I like that. Well, everybody's going to do it because eventually people will get smart enough and they're just going to be like, what are you guys doing? The government can't hold it off that long. No, more or less, do they want to? Because they're going to have to participate. The energy side of it, I don't know what you think, Nick. The energy side of it more or less might force politicians and governments to get into it just because they don't have more creative solutions. Solar and wind do not work. Electric cars across the country is not going to work. The false narratives around fossil fuels are not going to work when everybody is starving. So I don't think that they have it right, and I kind of think that it's become a necessity at some point, right? But I don't know. That's really good stuff, though. You're writing on like proof of work, proof of stake. I mean, it hits the nail on the head, and it just more shows like, dude, proof of stake bad. Proof of stake doesn't work, not because it can't work, but because humans are the problem, and we should understand that at this point. We're not a computer, and we're all biased, and we all have our issues. We are not the solution. We are the problem sometimes, and if we can remove ourselves, things will get better, and that's what proof of work is.
So you were talking a lot about some of the energy stuff earlier. So I remember seeing this chart, and I'm trying to go through this and read it a little bit to try to understand exactly what we're looking at. Let me see. If you look at the right sides of the graphs above and below, 100% of the overall usage decline was in rejected energy. What does that say? So 67.5% of the total, I guess, consumption. Is that consumption?
Yeah.
Yeah. Usage. Yeah. Usage decline was rejected energy, which means we are getting more efficient with our energy, but we still have a long way to go. So I'm trying to figure out what this rejected energy piece is here.
Rejected energy, I believe. I mean, I'm sure there's like an actual template, but I'm going to say rejected energy for a large part is energy that doesn't get used, energy that goes in the ground and nothing happens from it.
Of energy that goes into a process that
Can you hear this?
comes out generally as waste heat to the environment. So if you can.
Anyways, I'm not going to read into all this stuff right now, but this was an interesting chart. I want to say it was something like the rejected energy was just lost energy, basically, or
yeah.
something
I mean,
like
but
that.
That's the whole problem. Over half of energy produced in the United States gets wasted and or quote unquote rejected. I think that's the same thing, and that's a problem. Like, is that not a problem? Like, do people not realize how much of a problem that is? The fact that we don't have more creative solutions. Why? Because we will not do anything with nuclear, and we are stuck on fossil fuels, not because they're bad, but because dinosaurs gave us coal, and we should be very, very thankful that they did, because other planets, and why maybe there are UFOs or aren't UFOs. I listened to this one video, Nick. It was pretty cool. It was like, we should be very happy that we have fossil fuels, mostly because it was like a phenomenon that most other worlds may not have experienced. And we got to experience it, so we get fossil fuels. Like, without coal, without fossil fuels, we would be nowhere. We would be literally still just like kind of figuring out gas.
We'd be burning fires inside tents to stay warm.
we'd have problems. Or, I mean, actually, I kind of believe we would have found other solutions because I believe like there's probably like hydro energy can pull, like there's probably all kinds of crazy stuff you can do on this earth that we have not figured out yet that are even better than nuclear per se.
Sure.
But we're not there yet, or we haven't been forced into a corner to figure it out. I'm more of a like anything's possible because Nikola Tesla, isn't that a true thing? Like he discovered hydropower. I don't want to say anything that's going to get this podcast censored and canceled and the whole thing. I'm fairly certain there's been other ways to produce energy and it's been shut down largely by big bodies.
Hey, I got to give a shout out to this guy, Paul Mission. This dude is freaking hilarious with the memes. Look at this. Politicians, scandal. I've tested positive for COVID-19. I feel fine and I'm isolating. I'm thankful to be fully vaccinated and up to date on my boosters to keep me safe.
That's so funny. Dude, it's just below the line stuff. But I feel like that was a good place to end it with our podcast today. Your talk about proof of stake and proof of work. And obviously we're pretty happy this podcast is growing. We have some prospects in the future, everybody. I do feel like we might have some listeners to the end at this point. So for you at the end, we do have some big things coming.
Yep.
Nick and I are still pressing on. It's going to be a really fun journey. I feel like maybe by episode 100, the Bitcoin price might actually be back up to where it was. And then people will start actually asking us for advice. Don't quote me on that, but we're on a recorded podcast. So quoted.
Yeah.
And hopefully just kind of more good things to come, dude. But this is a great podcast. I always like.
Yeah. So Griff, I didn't tell you, but I did meet with some people yesterday and we got it all moving in the right direction. So we have been communicating back and forth with the potential guest, or he has confirmed. We're just tacking down the date and all the details and stuff. Has confirmed. So, yeah, looking forward to it. So coming August here, we're going to have some a fun treat for you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be good. But I don't know if Nick wants to leave anybody with anything, but this was a really good podcast, whether you want to talk about just what's going on today, how people view Bitcoiners. You guys can find us on Twitter, where we are always giving out great tweets, quote tweets, staying in the news. We are down in the rabbit hole of Bitcoin. So if you want what's really going on in the world, follow us on Twitter. I think we're going to get an Instagram up and going by the end of this weekend. I was on TikTok. No longer look for us on TikTok. It scares me, and I'm getting it off of my phone. Instagram and Twitter, they take my data more secretively, so I'm okay with it. As long as it's not written in the terms of service, I'm okay with being duped, But if they're putting the writing on the wall, aka TikTok, have to be off. So yeah, get at us on Twitter, Instagram soon, and we got some big guests coming up. But other than that, peace.